Football, in one form or other, has been played for over 2,000 years. It first emerged as a recognisable team sport in the 12th century England. And almost as soon as it had, King Edward II complained of the great noise in the city caused by hustling of large balls, and promptly jailed all of the players. Two centuries later, in Renaissance Italy, another version with 22 stylishly dressed players on either side entertained the crowds in Florence, and on various feast days throughout the summer still do. In England, by 1850, a village football match literally meant that the whole village would turn out and compete with its neighbours. It was often a little difficult to keep track of the ball. The rose-covered arch acted as the goal, probably the prettiest in football history. In 1863, meeting in a London pub called the Freemasons' Arms, a group of sporting enthusiasts formed the Football Association, devising rules that would turn football from the random free-for-all into the game we love today. Complete with streamlined teams of 11 on each side, proper goalposts and nets, strict time periods of 45 minutes each way, and a tweed-jacketed referee to control the match, football became the most popular sport in Britain. The ladies also found it entertaining. The French were the first to see the potential of football as a world sport, although the British started a football association in 1863. In 1904, FIFA, or the International Federation of Football Associations, was formed and the foundations of the World Cup were laid. The outbreak of the First World War laid to rest FIFA's ambitious plans, and they had to be shelved indefinitely. When the war ended, it took FIFA 15 years to regain many of its former members. Much of the credit is due to a 48-year-old French publisher, Jules Rimet, who became president of FIFA in 1921. He retired from the job 33 years later, aged 81. Rimet was dedicated to the dream of a world football competition, open to every nation. It was at the football finals at the 1924 Olympic Games in Paris that Rimet was given the opportunity of realizing that dream. The president of the South American Republic of Uruguay had come to Paris to see his country beat Switzerland 3-0 to become Olympic champions. Rimet lost no time suggesting to the president that Uruguay would be the perfect choice to host the first FIFA World Cup. The president agreed. It had taken all of 26 years for FIFA to turn their dreams into a reality. 4 European nations decided to enter the first World Cup. The journey to Uruguay took a mammoth 14 days. On the 18th July 1930, at the unfinished Centenary Stadium of Montevideo, the first World Cup got underway. The Europeans were guests of honor and were the first to parade in the opening ceremony. But the South Americans dominated the scene from the first kickoff. The final was between Argentina and Uruguay and caused a problem right from the start. Both teams wanted to play with their own ball, but Argentina won the toss and played with theirs. But it didn't bring them any luck. One-armed Hector Castro made it 4-2 for the host nation. Uruguay were the first Cup champions. In 1934, 32 countries entered the Second World Cup in Rome, Italy. With the eyes of the world focused on his country, Mussolini cunningly turned the World Cup into a huge PR event for his fascist party. Once again, the host nation reached the final. Italy played Czechoslovakia before a vast crowd. Although hundreds of Czechs crossed the Alps to support their team, the Italians won 2-1. Whatever reservations FIFA had about Mussolini using the tournament for his own political purposes, there is no doubt that the World Cup proved to be a major sporting event. In 1938, the World Cup came to Paris. FIFA invested 2 million francs on the stadium and players' accommodation, and their investment paid off. 36 countries participated. Before a huge crowd, Italy met Hungary in the final and deserved their 4-2 win. Once again, Europe went to war. Internationalism and everything FIFA stood for was shattered. London's Arsenal Stadium was just one of the many great football grounds on both sides to be severely damaged. Brazil. The fourth World Cup was held well away from war-torn Europe. The year was 1950. The major matches were played in the famous Maracana Stadium, which holds 205,000 people and is still the world's largest football stadium. In many ways, it was an extraordinary competition with exciting and dynamic football. Unfortunately, India withdrew when FIFA insisted that they should wear football boots. England, with Billy Wright and Stanley Matthews on the team, reached the World Cup finals for the first time and lost 1-0 to United States. Nobody could quite believe it. Nearly 200,000 people turned out to watch the final between Brazil and Uruguay. Everyone expected Brazil to be victorious, but Uruguay beat them 2-1. Nobody could quite believe that either. There was mass hysterics, faintings, and even suicide. A samba had been composed with Brazil's victory in mind, but was never played. The 1950 World Cup proved that it was the world's most important football tournament. Switzerland was the host nation in 1954. For the first time, commemorative coins were minted to mark the event, an early example of World Cup marketing. It was a first, too, for television, although the coverage was seen by a limited audience. Goal scoring reached incredible heights. 140 goals were scored in the 26 games. On a rainy Sunday, Hungary played West Germany in the final and scored twice in the first 8 minutes. But West Germany fought back with great determination and talent. 1, 2, 3, Germany had won. It was Hungary's first defeat in 30 internationals. West Germany were the new World Cup champions. The 1958 World Cup in Sweden saw the debut of a dynamic 17-year-old from Brazil. His name was Pelé. It was with great goals like this that he became the world's first soccer superstar. In an exciting final, the host nation, Sweden, scored the first goal. They were no match for the mighty Brazil, who went on to win 5-2. Pelé's magic was already evident. At 17, he was a national hero, and Brazil, for the first time, were World Cup champions. It was scenes like these, seen by the biggest international television audience to date, that established Pelé as a superstar overnight. Two years before the World Cup was held in Chile, a series of earthquakes badly damaged the country's towns and cities, a problem faced by Mexico in 1985. But like the Mexicans, nothing would deter the Chileans from staging the World Cup. By 1962, the new stadium was ready in Santiago. It was to be the scene of one of the most extraordinary World Cup games ever. The match between Chile and Italy, which Italy went on to win 2-0, was dubbed the Battle of Santiago. It took the very experienced skills of the FIFA referee to stop it ending in bloodshed. Even Brazil, the masters of attack, became more defensive and adopted a 4-3-3 system. However, they still proved their superiority by beating Czechoslovakia in the final 3-1. For the second time running, Brazil won the Rimet Trophy. The 1966 tournament in London reached an audience of over 500 million on television. The World Cup had come of age. It was now rated as highly as the Olympics as a world-class sporting event. But the pictures coming from England told an ugly tale of violence. After these experiences in England, Pelé almost gave up World Cup football. In the match between Brazil and Portugal, he was a marked man. Within 25 minutes of the first half, 2 Portuguese defenders brought him down viciously. Pelé was quoted for saying afterwards, "Football has become distorted by violence. I do not want to finish my life as an invalid." The referees had a frustrating time. The Argentinians played themselves out of the competition with some cruel football. Many rated the final between West Germany and England as the most exciting match in any World Cup to date. Germany scored first, but England equalised and later took the lead. The West Germans made a comeback and in the last seconds equalised. Extra time was to be played. To this day, no one knows if England's third goal was in fact a goal. The Swiss referee decided that the ball did cross the line. Even from another angle, it still isn't clear. This goal, the fourth, gave Geoff Hurst a hat-trick, the first ever in a cup final. Her Majesty the Queen presented Sir Alf Ramsey's heroes with the Rimet Trophy. Alf Ramsey, the England manager, had promised the nation they would win the cup. And they did. Mexico, 1970. Though the atmosphere in Mexico was politically unstable and emotionally highly charged, the 1970 World Cup went off without a hitch. The Europeans were worried by the high altitude and heat, but Brazil enjoyed playing in the conditions perfectly suited to them. They were convinced they could win the trophy for the third time. England, the holders, were strong contenders. So were West Germany. For their superstar, Franz Beckenbauer, Mexico was a particularly memorable World Cup.
Yeah, but the most exciting World Cup was 70 in Mexico. It was a beautiful World Cup, and I never forget in my life the both games against England. England lead 2-0 and we win in the overtime 3-2.
In this yo-yo of a match, Beckenbauer's goal helped West Germany to victory. They beat England 3-2 in extra time. The The semi-final between West Germany and Italy was one of the most memorable matches in the Mexico World Cup. Despite the fact that Beckenbauer was fouled and badly hurt, he showed great resilience by continuing. West Germany lost 4-3, but nobody will forget Beckenbauer's display of courage.
Those games are, and I never forget in my life.
The final between Brazil and Italy was charged with excitement and emotion. In his last World Cup appearance, Pelé scored Brazil's first goal with a brilliant header. Brazil's skill, hard to match at the best of times, floored at least one member of the Italian team. In the second half, Brazil showed that South American-style football could beat the defensive European approach. The destruction of the destroyers. Brazil held the magnificent trophy for the third time. FIFA allowed them to keep it forever. Pelé went to France, the world's first ambassador of football. A year later, he retired from the national team, but his career was by no means over. Warner Communications, the American entertainment giants, lured Pelé out of retirement to play for the New York Cosmos. His 3-year contract was estimated to be worth around $4.5 million. Almost single-handed, he launched football in the United States. In the summer of 1977, Pelé's last season in America, the Cosmos were unbeatable. In a round of playoffs in the US Soccer Ball Championships, the superstar of superstars delighted the crowds with a magnificent display. Ten days later, the Cosmos beat the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and Pelé is watched by the biggest crowd ever to see a football match in North America, 77,691, and proved at the age of 36 he was the highest paid footballer on the planet. Selling football to the American public was a tough job because of all the competition. As Lee Stone, owner of one of the world's most successful football franchises at the time, explained.
We have 2 baseball teams, the Cubs and the White Sox. We have the Chicago Bears football team. We have the Blackhawks hockey team. We have the Bulls basketball team. We have 16 television stations. So we really are competing for the entertainment dollar, and it makes it very difficult.
So football was sold as a 3-hour piece of entertainment and its players as stars. There were team mascots who appealed to the children in the crowd. Beautiful cheerleaders to appeal to their dads. And instant replays so that you could enjoy the great moments over again. In Chicago, the action was expertly underscored by a lady using an electronic organ. Behind the scenes in New York, there was an electronic Big Brother making sure that the home team got the support they deserved. At half-time, the entertainment was a mini spectacular. On October the 1st, 1977, Pelé retired from full-time professional football. That day, the Giants Stadium in New York was filled with 70,000 people and a great deal of emotion. Pelé's father sat beside Muhammad Ali. President Carter was represented by his son, Jeff. And England's Bobby Moore received a bear hug from the great man himself. Pelé's last salute to the world was typical of the man.
Lord! 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 Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
The match between New York Cosmos and Santos of Brazil symbolized Pelé's long career in football. He got his first professional break with Santos and for 3 years played for the Cosmos. The scoring was symbolic too. From a free kick he shot home the goal of the match. And the crowd went wild. At half-time, Pelé took off his number 10 shirt and presented it to his father as a souvenir. Pelé finished the match in the white shirt of Santos. An unforgettable day that ended an unforgettable career. Munich, 1974. One of the most memorable moments of this World Cup was the retirement of Sir Stanley Rouse as president of FIFA after 13 years in football's top job. During his presidency, FIFA, based in Zurich, Switzerland, with 4 football confederations already in existence, those of South America, Europe, Asia and Africa, added the American and the Oceania confederations to make the control of international football complete. Today, FIFA, with 150 member countries, is truly the United Nations of football. In Munich, the newly designed World Cup was to be played for the first time. In the 1974 finals, Holland, West Germany and Poland were teams who followed Brazil's example and set out to play total football, which means that every player on the field except the goalkeeper is a potential scorer. Several lesser nations reached these finals, Haiti and Zaire, who represented Africa. Even the Australians had a look in, but their exits were pretty quick. It was Holland and West Germany, the two most dynamic teams, who rightly reached the final. The match almost started without corner flags. In all the organisation, officials had forgotten to mark out the pitch in the correct manner. There were red faces all round. The game itself was a piece of pure football skill, a perfect example of total football. It kept the biggest TV audience ever glued to their sets. Within a minute of kick-off, Holland was awarded a penalty. West Germany equalised with a penalty of their own. And then Müller hit a brilliant winner. West Germany, the host nation, had won the World Cup the second time. That gave Beckenbauer his greatest personal triumph, and he led the West Germany team to victory. In front of thousands of his local Bayern Munich supporters, Beckenbauer had brought the World Cup back home. Having reached the peak of success as a player, Beckenbauer faced a new challenge as West Germany's national team manager for World Cup '86 in Mexico. Sir Stanley Rouse closed the tournament.
Many of us, I hope, will meet again in the next World Cup in the Argentina in 1978.
Shortly after Munich, FIFA appointed Brazilian millionaire and grandfather João Havelange as its new president, a man dedicated to making football the #1 sport in most, if not all, of FIFA's member countries. To begin to achieve this, in the first years of Havelange's presidency, FIFA launched a version of the World Cup designed especially to appeal to the professionals of tomorrow, the world's youth teams. Played every 2 years instead of 4, the World Youth Championship was launched in Tunisia in 1977, with the Soviet Union being the first winners. In the Tokyo Championships in 1979, it launched a young superstar, Argentina's Diego Maradona, on $1 million career. In Sydney, Australia, it proved, given the right coaching, even a small nation like Qatar in the Middle East can reach the finals. The finals were held in the famous Sydney Cricket Ground at the beginning of an Australian winter. It wasn't just a light shower, but an enormous downpour when the youth teams of Qatar and West Germany met in the final. The match looked more like water polo than football. Conditions like these hardly helped the men from the desert. In the 85th minute, West Germany scored the final goal of the match. West Germany were victorious over Qatar 4-0 to become the third world youth champions. As the 1978 World Cup in Argentina approached, in Buenos Aires they totaled up the cost. By the time they had built some new earthquake-proof stadiums, like the one in Mendoza at the foothills of the Andes, which was suspended in a hole in the ground, and a new TV complex in the smart part of Buenos Aires, also half submerged, but not because of the earthquakes, but so it wouldn't become an eyesore to the wealthy neighbors. The cost of all this looked to be in the region of $500 million. So, to earn some of it back, they mounted a huge marketing campaign. With a possible return of $10 million, it was well worth the time and effort. Major manufacturers like Adidas got involved in the action as well. A lavish reception for over 1,000 people launched the World Cup ball, called the Tango. The men under real pressure were the national team managers like Cesar Luis Menotti from Argentina. Menotti tried to find a team that would play together as a team and not, as Argentinian players seemed to be, 11 individuals. Argentina was to be Helmut Schön's 4th World Cup as West Germany's national team manager. In putting a World Cup team together, what does he look for in his players?
He can be an individualist, but he must bring his individualism for the team. It is not possible to win a World Cup with 11 Beckenbauers or 11 Bobby Charltons or 11 Pelés. We must have a good mixture.
While in Rio de Janeiro, at Flamengo, the club he managed before becoming Brazil's national team manager, Claudio Coutinho called in to see a rising young player named Zico, who he tipped to become a world star after Argentina 78.
Well, Zico is one of the best, maybe the best forward in Brazil actually. And he's a very interesting kind of player. He's a skillful player, very dangerous around the penalty area. Each time more he's improving his game by adding something more like heading and shooting, especially free kicks. He's a specialist in free kicks. He's a very creative player, talented player. I think he's one of the best strikers of Brazil, and maybe in the next World Cup he'll become a world star.
The first surprise of Argentina 78 was, despite forecasts of doom and gloom, it began on time. With stadium complete and all the television transmitters working overtime, the tournament was viewed by a record audience estimated at over 1 billion people. The following day, France met Italy, and history was made. French forward Bernard scored one of the fastest officially recorded goals in the World Cup. Ali MacLeod's much-publicised Scottish squad came unstuck at the hands of Peru, a small South American team. Peru demolished the Scots 3-1 and held Holland to a goalless draw. They turned out to be the team to watch as they made their way through the second round, shooting 4 goals past Iran. After a disastrous start in Argentina, including the sending home of Willie Johnson, Scotland settled down and managed to play well, but it was too little too late. In their match against Holland, they needed to win by 3 clear goals to stay in the tournament. They succeeded with their 3 goals, but unfortunately for Scotland, Holland scored 2, suffering their only defeat in the qualifying rounds. Scotland flew back home. West Germany, the cup holders, scored 6 against Mexico, and at that rate they looked as though they would repeat their 1974 success. In their second game, they met their opponents from the '74 final, Holland, but they could only manage a draw. By the time Germany met Austria, they needed at least 5 goals to reach the final. Instead, they suffered their only defeat by 3 goals to 2 and were out of the World Cup. On June the 21st, playing just a few hours after Brazil's victory over Poland, Argentina knew that to get to the final they had to beat Peru by 4 clear goals. That evening nobody stirred on the streets of Buenos Aires or Rio, and the world held its breath as Argentina scored goal after goal. 6 in all found their way into the Peruvian net. Argentina, runners-up in the first World Cup, had made it to the final again, 48 years later. On Sunday, the 25th of June 1978, 77,000 people packed the stadium for the World Cup final. Both Argentina and Holland were determined not to be the runners-up for the second time. It took 37 minutes of the first half before Argentina got the goal they wanted. Ardili slipped a pass to Luke, who passed to Kempes, who scored with a low shot into the net. Argentina looked nervous as they entered the pitch at the beginning of the second half to face fierce Dutch attacks. The equaliser came in the 81st minute when René van der Kerkhoff placed a fine cross which Poortvliet headed into the net. 8 minutes later, Brandt smashed the ball into the goalpost but didn't score. The match went into extra time. In the 103rd minute, Holland's dream of winning the cup was shattered when Kempes dodged 3 of Holland's defenders and shot into the net. The Matador, as he was nicknamed, sent the crowd into a frenzy of celebration. But it really was all over when in the 114th minute, Kempes again made a solo run to put Bertoli through for the final goal of the match. Argentina became only the 6th country to win the world's most prized sporting trophy. In 1982, the largest ever World Cup opened in Barcelona. Maradona, under £1 million contract with Barcelona, was marked from the start. Menotti, Argentina's team manager, who had given up smoking, has started again after Argentina lost 1-0 to Belgium and 3-0 to Brazil, and when, with a vicious foul, Maradona was sent off the pitch. Cameroon surprised everyone by remaining undefeated in 3 matches, even drawing with Italy. Kuwait threatened to quit the World Cup after controversy over the 4th goal in their match with France. The Prince came down to the pitch to calm his country's players and lost himself a minute's worth of his income with a £5,000 fine for interference. Britain was represented by 3 teams: Scotland, Northern Ireland and England. Every host nation in the World Cup stands a good chance of winning, but the rot set in when Spain lost 1-0 to Northern Ireland, who fielded the youngest ever World Cup player, 17-year-old Norman Whiteside. Scotland just weren't a match for the favourites Brazil, losing 4-1. England's Brian Robson scored the fastest ever World Cup goal in just 27 seconds after kickoff against France. England's Brooking and Keegan, both suffering injuries, couldn't play until England's last match against Spain. Although they were undefeated in all 5 matches, England didn't qualify and retired gracefully. Brazil, dynamic and skillful, looked the favourites, but Italy's Rossi scored 3 goals to Brazil's 2. Brazil was out, and Italy were on their way up. Poland and Italy met in the semi-final. Rossi scored both of the Italian goals to beat Poland 2-0. He was voted the man of the match. France reached the semi-final with Germany and surprised everybody by forcing a 3-3 draw by the end of extra time. West Germany earned the right to meet Italy in the final by beating France in a match that ended in sudden death. Despite royalty, presidents, and an enthusiastic 95,000-strong crowd, the first half of the final was dull. Fouls dominated goal. Until after the 56th minute, Rossi scored for Italy. Tardelli scored their second goal, and Conti made it an undisputable 3-0 for Italy. Breitner scored for West Germany, but it was too late, and Italy became world champions for the third time. Nine months before the World Cup was due to begin, Mexico suffered a devastating earthquake. Thousands died, and many more thousands were made homeless. But on schedule, on the last day of May 1986, the World Cup began. In the first round against Belgium, Mexico's Querati scored first. Teammate Sanchez celebrated by booting the ball into the crowd. His high spirits earned him a yellow card, but he went on to score the second goal. The final score, Mexico 2, Belgium 1. And Mexico City celebrated long into the night. Denmark, first time in the World Cup, were a revelation. They won all their first round matches, including a mighty victory against Uruguay, 6-1. France's superstar Platini scored against Brazil in a cliffhanger of a match, but France eventually won on penalties. England assured themselves of a place in the quarter-finals by beating Paraguay 3-0. First Lineker, then Beardsley, and Lineker again, and the rich clubs of Europe got out their contracts and checkbooks. For openers, Argentina beat Korea 3-1. Then they drew with Italy 1-1. Maradona, thank God. Then came a miracle. For the first time in 56 years in a World Cup, Argentina beat Uruguay 1-0. Argentina went on to meet England in the quarter-final. Both teams were cautious, but early in the second half, Maradona broke loose and scored the most disputed goal of the Mexico World Cup. Was it handball? Most thought it was, but the referee allowed it. Maradona scored again, and England were in trouble. Then Lineker scored. Too little, too late, and England were out of the World Cup. It was a case of deja vu when France's Platini met West Germany's Karl-Heinz Rummenigge in the semi-final for the second time in 4 years. After a hard-fought match, the score ended, West Germany 2, France 0. So it was Argentina versus West Germany, the most exciting World Cup final in years. Argentina scored first from a free kick. Valdano made it 2-0 early in the second half. Suddenly, West Germany replied with a goal from Rummenigge. Then a second from Voller. With only 9 minutes to go, Maradona passed to Burruchaga. And Argentina had won the World Cup for the second time in 8 years. 4 years later, after his Mexico 1986 triumph, a restaurant pays Diego Maradona, now by far the most famous player in the world, the ultimate compliment by naming a pizza after him. Up the road in the world-famous Lido nightclub, celebrities, television crews, and the world's sporting press gathered for football's version of the Oscars. In the atmosphere of champagne and the high-kicking Bluebell girls, Adidas paid tribute to the top European clubs and the world's top players. Gary Lineker was there, and West Germany's Harald Schumacher. Spain's legendary club Real Madrid was honoured, as was Gary Lineker, twice. First for his Everton triumph of 30 goals in 42 matches, and then for his spectacular performance in Mexico to become the 1986 World Cup top scorer, winning the Adidas Golden Boot. And then it was time for Argentina's Diego Maradona. Close to 1,000 sports reporters were polled by Adidas to decide who should receive the 1986 Golden Ball Award. Scoring a massive 2,564 points, Maradona was named the world's best player. The next World Cup was to be held in Italy in 1990, but it all began in Zurich, Switzerland in December 1987. At the draw, Pili was guest of honour when the competition for the 22 places at this year's 24-nation final began. Italy, the host, and Argentina, 1986 World Cup winners, did not have to compete. But a total of 112 national teams prepared themselves for a long, hard contest, which was to span 20 months. West Germany was one of the favourite teams to win. In Cologne, Franz Beckenbauer took his team through a strenuous training schedule before every qualifying game. Beckenbauer, who as a player had already won the World Cup in 1974, was given the opportunity to win the World Cup as a manager. Beckenbauer explains what inspiration he could be to his young players.
Well, I was an international player. I played over 100 times in the German national team. And so I think I understand a little bit about the game. So I can give, for example, young players, I can give my experience I had in the last 25 years.
Among the brightest of his young stars was striker Jürgen Klinsmann and goalkeeper Bodo Illingner. In their final qualifying match, West Germany met Wales and won. Beckenbauer's World Cup magic was working once more. November 1989. England's training ground at Bisham Abbey in Buckinghamshire, and Bobby Robson, one of the longest-serving national team managers, was particularly pleased at having qualified for the World Cup without conceding a single goal. Robson's insistence on the monitoring of the fitness of his players was going to be important as a guide for the build-up to England's first-round World Cup matches. This test would reveal if there's any imbalance between a player's right and left legs.
And what you do need is a truly balanced player, so that if he's got a strong left foot or a strong left leg, his right leg needs to be just the same.
Meanwhile, an unbelievable incident occurred during a vital qualifying game in which Chile needed to win, but were losing to the home team, Brazil. Chile's goalkeeper faked being hit by a flare. The Chileans, in mock outrage, refused to continue, and the match was abandoned. As a result, the goalkeeper was banned for life. As hosts to the Cup that year, the Italians did not have to qualify. But as many of the world's top stars played for Italian teams, the Italians had the advantage of playing with their rivals before playing against them. The 1990 World Cup opened in Milan, Italy, with a fashion show. And early on, Roger Milla of Cameroon became a star. One of the smallest countries in Africa, Cameroon proved to be a sensation, reaching the quarter-finals to play England. Not surprisingly, the local witch doctor was on their side.
By my prediction, 2-1.
Unfortunately, Papa was wrong. Lineker was fouled in the penalty area and the spirits were on his side. The match ended 3-2 to England and the Cameroons were out. For the first time in the World Cup, the Republic of Ireland reached the quarter-finals, thrilling their army of high-spirited fans. The man who masterminded Ireland's success was ex-England player turned manager Jack Charlton. 1990 saw Ireland reach the quarter-finals, but go no further. The behaviour after this incident earned Holland's Frank Rijkaard and West Germany's Rudi Völler red cards. Rijkaard spat at Völler and the temperature in the stadium reached boiling point. German player Jürgen Klinsmann explains.
Because of the pressure outside and the importance of a match, you lose it for a couple of seconds, you lose control over yourself, and he excused, he apologized, and that's all you can do.
Klinsmann himself was very controlled. This goal put Holland out of the World Cup. Italy found that they had a new star in their midst. His name, Salvatore Schillaci from Sicily. He became Italia 90's highest goal scorer with 6. Back at home, they counted every one. They celebrated his triumphs long into the night. This is Sergio Goycochea, Argentina's brave and brilliant goalkeeper. The semi-final between Italy and Argentina had to be decided by penalties. thanks to Goicoechea, Argentina won. Italy mourned the fact that the team in blue was Argentina and not them on the night of the final in Rome on the 8th of July 1990. It was a repeat of the final 4 years previously, but this time West Germany appeared to have the edge, while Argentina displayed nothing but angst. Klinsmann was an early victim. With red cards flying and more fouls to come, Argentina's dirty tactics worked against them. West Germany's volley was flawed, and Bremer beat Goicoechea to score the only goal of the game. It was enough. West Germany had won the World Cup for the third time. So, what did it feel like?
In the moment where you win the World Cup, you're just happy, but you're also happy that the whole tournament is over. Because, I mean, you stayed about 2 months, every day together with the team, you work for a certain aim, and at the end of such a tournament, you're also exhausted mentally.
But above all, the World Cup is about having fun. In December 1993 in Las Vegas, the biggest show on earth got off to a spectacular start, when 3,500 people came to watch a host of world-famous entertainers at the final draw to decide in which of the 6 groups the 24 competing nations would be placed. Robin Williams and Faye Dunaway helped FIFA's General Secretary pick the countries.
Is United States of America.
With the 24 countries placed in the 6 groups, the 1994 World Cup was launched on New Year's Day in Pasadena, California, where a giant replica of the World Cup trophy was paraded in the famous Tournament of Roses, cheered on by some rising Hollywood stars. The 24 teams were divided among 9 major cities for the 36 first-round games. The USA, Colombia, and Romania were based in Los Angeles, the home of Hollywood and the World Cup Organizing Committee. San Francisco hosted the teams from Brazil, Russia, and Cameroon in Group B. South of San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge and busy downtown is Stanford University Stadium, where the majority of Group B's first-round games were played. Brazil, with players like Branco and Rai, their captain, were looking to make a major impact. Chicago, in America's Midwest, played host to Germany, Bolivia, and Spain. It was in Chicago that World Cup 1994 kicked off on June the 17th with a spectacular opening ceremony. Germany, the champions, set out to win the World Cup for a 4th time. Their captain, Matthaus, had represented his country an amazing 104 times, a German record. 2 of Germany's star players, who were eagerly watched, were Jürgen Klinsmann and goalkeeper Bodo Illingner. Boston on the eastern seaboard hosted Argentina, Greece, and Nigeria in Group D. Boston isn't large, but is the most picturesque of the World Cup cities. Most of Group D's first-round games were played in the Foxborough Stadium. Argentina, seeded number 1 in the group, first won the World Cup in 1978. Their leading player, Diego Maradona, was considered by many to be the world's best. Number 9, Batistuta, is also a force to be reckoned with. New York soccer fans had the chance to rub shoulders with Italian, Irish, and Norwegian teams, 3 out of the 4 nations in Group E. It was in New York that the 1994 World Cup poster was designed. The majority of the games were played in the Giant Stadium in New Jersey, which Pele regularly filled to capacity in the 70s. Seeded number 1 in Group E was Italy, with superstar Roberto Baggio, who always attracted a large number of fans. 3 out of the 4 teams in Group F, Belgium, Morocco, and Holland, played the majority of their first-round games in Orlando, Florida, the home of Disney World. This was Morocco's 3rd World Cup final. For Belgium, their 9th. Holland's fans hoped for a warm welcome from Florida's orange growers, and in this year, they were one of the teams to watch. With players like striker Dennis Bergkamp and midfielder Frank Rijkaard, they fielded considerable goal-scoring potential. Add Ronald Koeman, who had one of the most powerful kicks in the game, and Holland hoped to surprise the world. Detroit welcomed the remaining member of Group B, Sweden, and Group A, Switzerland. Detroit Silverdome became the venue for the US team's first World Cup '94 game. They flew in from Los Angeles to meet Switzerland. The game made World Cup history by being the first to be played on grass indoors. Dallas, Texas played host to the fourth team from Group C, South Korea, and Group D, Bulgaria. During the first stages of the tournament, Dallas received flying visits from Germany, Argentina, Spain, and Nigeria. Bulgaria, in white, caused a sensation in the qualifying rounds when they beat France not once, but twice. South Korea, one of the two Asian countries to qualify, displayed pride over their World Cup record. Washington, D.C. hosted the teams drawn fourth in both Group E, Mexico, and in Group F, Saudi Arabia. Italy, Norway, Holland, and Belgium also made flying visits to the nation's capital. The games were played in the RFK Stadium. The Saudi Arabians, who have often received considerable bonuses from their government if they do well, were in fine form. The Mexicans, who were the first country to qualify, were spurred on by considerable and very colourful supporters. The US team's success was an incentive to establish soccer as a mainstream American sport. The first round, where a win was worth 3 points, threw up a few surprises, with the USA and Saudi Arabia sneaking into the last 16. There were plenty of goals, excitement, and drama. Bulgaria, who had never won a World Cup match in 16 previous attempts, was the biggest upset, beating Germany en route to the semi-finals. There was drama when Diego Maradona tested positive for drugs and was banned from the tournament and sent home. In the quarterfinals, Brazil found themselves up against 7 teams from Europe. The quarterfinal between Holland and Brazil turned out to be the match of the tournament. Dunga, Brazil's captain, and his teammates eventually won the game 3-2. In the semi-finals, Roberto Baggio took Italy 2 goals ahead against giant killers Bulgaria. Minutes before half-time, Bulgaria was awarded a penalty, which would be their only goal of the match. Italy was through to the final, where they would meet Brazil. The final pitted 2 nations against each other who had both won the World Cup 3 times. What, in theory, was to be the ideal match turned out to be ultimately disappointing. For the first time in history, the World Cup final had come down to penalties. Italy's Roberto Baggio stepped up knowing he had to score. But when his shot went over the crossbar, Brazil knew they were champions again, 24 years after their last success. The 16th FIFA World Cup, held in France, turned out to be one of the best ever. 32 nations took part, playing 64 matches. The 8 groups of 4 teams were spread throughout France in the 10 new or refurbished stadiums. 32 countries meant 30 qualifying places, providing more opportunities for teams from Africa and Asia. It turned out to be one of the closest fought World Cups to date, which confirmed just how competitive the international game had become. In Group A was Scotland, who faced tough competition from the favourites, Brazil. Group B was headed by last-time runner-up Italy, who was to play Chile, Cameroon and Austria. Group C held the host nation France and also South Africa, Saudi Arabia and Denmark. Group D was headed by Spain, who had a tough match to start against Nigeria. Group E contained Holland, who yet again was joined by Belgium, among others. Group F was led by Germany and also paired America with Iran. Group G was England's group, which also held teams from Romania, Colombia and Tunisia. The final Group H was headed by the 1986 winners, Argentina. England's manager, Glenn Hoddle, told us his views on the group selection.
All in all, not too displeased. I think we've got a capable squad of getting through to the next phase, and a lot of hard work still to be done.
The tournament got underway with Brazil beating Scotland 2-1 at the Stade de France. Norway was supposed to be Brazil's main opponents in their group. Having drawn with both Scotland and Morocco, Norway had to beat Brazil in the last match to qualify for the next round, and they did. It was Brazil's first defeat in a first-round match in 32 years. Host nation France had little trouble in their group, winning all their games. Spain was the biggest disappointment of the World Cup, by failing to reach the second round, even after thrashing Bulgaria 6-1. South Korea yet again failed to win a World Cup match, and Holland topped their group, followed by Mexico. The German side managed to recover from being 2 goals down against Yugoslavia to pull off a 2-2 scoreline, eventually going on to win the group. The USA lost all their matches and failed to live up to predictions that they were underestimated. England and Romania qualified from Group G, and Argentina won all their games without conceding a single goal to top Group H. Batistuta scored the only hat-trick of the tournament in their 5-0 win against Jamaica. 10 of the 16 nations qualifying for the second round were European. Italy beat Norway 1-0, while Ronaldo gave a great performance in Brazil's 4-1 victory against Chile by scoring twice. Laurent Blanc became the first man to decide a game by scoring a golden goal for France against Paraguay. Argentina beat England on penalties after Ince and Batty failed their attempts and England went out. Penalties were also necessary in the quarter-finals between France and Italy. It was the third time Italy had gone out of the World Cup on penalties. Brazil beat Denmark in an entertaining 3-2 match, while Holland beat Argentina 2-1 after a brilliant Bergkamp goal in the last minute. It was a sad ending for German star Matthaus, playing in his record 25th World Cup match, as Croatia won 3-0 to take the final place in the semi-finals. Penalties again were the decider in the semi-final between Brazil and Holland. When Ronald de Boer missed a decisive shot for Holland, Brazil were in the final once more. The host nation, France, were 1 goal down against Croatia when they scored twice to win the game and send France to their first ever World Cup final. It was on the 12th of July that a superb header in the 27th minute from Zinedine Zidane and a second just before half-time sent Brazil on a downward slope that they would never recover from. Even after being reduced to 10 men, Emmanuel Petit managed to score a third goal for France in the last minute, and the entire population celebrated long throughout the night. The 2002 FIFA World Cup stands out. Never before has a World Cup been co-hosted or held in Asia. The competition kicked off on June the 1st in South Korea, and the city of Yokohama in Japan played host to the final on June the 30th. With no European team having ever won the World Cup outside of Europe, and with the quality of the international game improving all the time, the 2002 World Cup promised the best yet.